The topic for today is Exchange and Skype for Business Server, and it's being presented by Directions analysts Rob Helm and Jim Gaynor. Take it away, Rob.
Hi, welcome. Today, Jim and I would like to talk to you about the entertaining topic of a mass extinction, the end of support for most versions of Exchange Server and Skype for Business Server. So we will talk about, first I'll introduce the company and who Jim and I are, and then we'll talk about what around Directions on Microsoft we call the Meteor. And then we'll explain the impact of that Meteor on Exchange Server, the email software that Microsoft sells for hosting on premises, and also on Skype for Business Server, the corresponding ancestor of Teams. And then we'll look at least in my case, how you can get to a supported version of Exchange Server, and that'll carry you forward. And I'll explain some of the impacts for Exchange Online and Outlook, the client software, which has always been attached to Exchange and is becoming even more attached with this version. So I'll give some recommendations. Jim will have some recommendations and explain corresponding the path forward. He'll also talk a little bit about the paths forward on Windows Server and SQL Server, specifically for Skype for Business Server. And he'll bring up our ever popular topic of licensing. So Directions on Microsoft, we're an independent firm, not part of Microsoft, not a Microsoft partner. All we do and all we've been doing since 1992 is give you impartial facts and insight, help you plan for, evaluate, and purchase Microsoft technology and cloud services. And we try to put it all in one place, save you time, save your people time who work for you as they research these topics. So the most relevant service we offer to this webinar today is road mapping service, where we look at what the trends and the likely trends are for the development of Microsoft software in the enterprise and how it might affect your business. And we've been doing this for a very long time. I have been doing it personally since 1997. I've held almost every job at Directions, including Jim's, but Jim now holds Jim's job. Jim is the head of our editorial team after leading our enterprise infrastructure and now also continues to lead our teams in collaboration practice.
Leading teams, not the team at the same time.
Yeah, leading teams and team. Exactly.
There's never any confusion there.
Okay, so I promise we'll explain what the Meteor is and how it's going to affect Exchange Server and some related products, and then Jim will do the same for Skype for Business Server. So that's how I'd like to break this up. So the Meteor, what Meteor? Well, what we're talking about when we say a Meteor is a big wave of support cutoffs, the next one in 2025, 2026. After support has been cut off for products like the ones listed on this slide, it is not safe to use in production. The bad guys are out there. Microsoft is still issuing updates for, say, Exchange Server after Exchange Server 2019 leaves extended support. The bad guys are reverse engineering those updates and figuring out where the vulnerabilities were that were being patched. And then they go after the older versions, like anything that's left to support that don't have the security updates. So it is really important, in our opinion, to stay supported to the greatest extent that you can. And so we see this mass extinction or Meteor as a major point, a touch point in your IT department. And my guess is that you're all well into mitigating the Meteor, but I want to talk about how specifically for Exchange it might go. So for Exchange Server 2016 and Exchange Server 2019, they both leave support October 14th of this year. And I do not expect Microsoft to offer extended security updates. You've probably heard for Windows, Windows Server, and SQL Server that Microsoft gives you sort of a get out of jail free card that allows you to get some security updates after a product is supported. Don't expect any of those with Exchange, and in general, don't bet that Microsoft is going to extend the deadline or do some other mitigating thing. Now, there may be some, if you're in the middle of a migration, you might be able to talk to your support team and get some help, but in general, you're going to be unsupported after October 14th on all current Exchange Server versions. So what are you going to be running if you're stuck on premises, if you have to stay there, for example, for compliance, or if you've got a major investment in some other hoster like Amazon? What are you going to be running in the way of email after October 14th, Exchange Server SE? So this in turn is going to have a pretty significant impact on Exchange Server, but maybe not as much as some people have said. For example, it's purely subscription licensing. So what that means, right now, Exchange Server mostly is bought with perpetual licenses. Now, perpetual licenses, they're licenses you buy, they give you rights, and you keep those rights forever, perpetual. The most important thing is that up to now, Exchange Server customers with perpetual rights have the option of taking what you might call the break in all caps. If a customer wants to ride a system into the sunset by paying nothing to Microsoft and just keep running it, up to now, they've had the right to do so. They could let their licenses sit there and their hardware molder away and run it until it left support. But with subscription licensing, you don't have that option. You either have to migrate off a product completely, or you have to keep paying subscription fees. Now, this isn't totally foreign to most of you, because most of you have probably bought software assurance. Software assurance is an add-on to perpetual licenses that has a lot of subscription characteristics. It runs for a fixed term. And it was required for certain kinds of Exchange configurations. For example, if you deployed Exchange on virtual machines and let those virtual machines wander widely in your data center using some kind of a virtual machine migration technology, you needed software assurance to get the right to use that technology, and it had to be current. So effectively, you bought your Exchange on subscription to get that feature. But now you won't even have the option of letting SA expire and stop using the feature. You have to, if you want any email service at all, you'll be paying in subscriptions. Now, other than Exchange, other than licensing, there are some improvements in Exchange Service SE that have been planned. Upgrade in place support. Right now, most organizations do their upgrades at Microsoft's recommendation. They're side-by-side migration. You get the new if you need to go from, say, Exchange Server 2013 to 2019, you buy all the hardware you're going to run 2019 on, maybe a little bit at a time. Install Exchange Server 2019 on that destination system, and then you migrate over the data and configuration. Big job, capital intensive early in the project. Upgrade in place Microsoft promises is better, and it better be, because you're going to experience it if you follow Microsoft's recommendation for getting to Exchange Server SE. How are you going to get there? Well, I'm going to call on our handy transit map with the migration paths. Hold on just a sec. Yes. So imagine you're an organization, you're still running Exchange Server 2016 and running it on an old Windows server. 2012 R2 is actually not supported, but if you have extended security updates, you might still have a supported configuration. Or you could be running it on Windows Server 2016. You need to get over here to one of the operating systems that still has some legs, like Windows Server 22 or 2025, and how are you going to get there? Well, this is the Microsoft's recommended path for people coming from Exchange Server 2016 to SE. Now, starting now, work on a migration to Exchange Server 2019 CU15. CU15 just came out, so Microsoft just fired the starting gun. And this will be a full dress, side-by-side migration where you buy a bunch of hardware and migrate data and configuration to it after installing the product, which in this case is 2019. Then you ride that puppy down until before October 14. Microsoft has promised in the third quarter of this year to release Exchange Server SE. You do your testing in a lab, and then you do an upgrade in place to your intended configuration, either 2022 or 2025. So the overall path, say for somebody from the oldest possible system here, upgrade to say Windows Server 2022 running 2019, do a bunch of testing. When SE comes out, do a bunch more testing, and then upgrade in place on that same hardware to SE. Why is Microsoft recommending doing 2 migrations or 2 upgrades in the same year? Well, if you want to do a side-by-side upgrade straight to SE, you can, but there isn't going to be a lot of time because, as I said, Microsoft is not promising SE until the third quarter of this year, and then support disappears shortly into the fourth quarter. So it's a very tight timeline, and hopefully you've all started, and I'm just wasting your time. If you have not, you should, and if you don't know, because this isn't your department, but maybe someone responsible for email reports to you, then I'd ask where they are in this process. And if they have not chosen to do the double migration, how they think they can get this done. There is a defensible case for it. Microsoft, as I said, has already released CU15, so you may be able, and Microsoft claims that CU15 of Exchange Server 2019 is basically code compatible with Exchange Server SE. There will be differences in branding and in license activation. There has to be because it's a subscription activation product, but there will nonetheless be enough similarity that Microsoft claims you can do a lot of your testing without having SE at hand. And of course, some of you are in the technology adoption program. You've had SE for a while to work with. And so you may be able to do this single migration. I don't want to imply it's impossible, but the default recommendation from us and from Microsoft is to take this route. Get to 2019 as soon as you can, and then do the upgrade in place. So I'm just going to briefly talk about, that's Exchange Server. I want to briefly talk about some impacts that this whole plan has on Exchange Online, Microsoft's hosted email cloud service, and the Outlook client. As far as getting you to Exchange Server 2019, I have to tell you, Exchange Online is going to act as an enforcer. What do I mean by that? Well, starting in 2023, Exchange Online began blocking what Microsoft calls persistently vulnerable servers. So these are servers that, among other things, are running an unsupported version of Exchange Server. They're persistently vulnerable because they can't apply security updates any longer. And so Microsoft set up a mechanism in Exchange Online to gradually start out just occasionally throttling them for a small fraction of time in every hour, and then moving to more and more time every hour, and then finally just blocking them 100%. So over 90 days, if you have one of these so-called persistently vulnerable servers, it will be cut off from Microsoft. Even if you're a hybrid customer, that is a customer who has mailboxes both in Exchange Server and Exchange Online. And most customers are at some stage of hybrid. A few of them, some of them have gotten rid of all the mailboxes and Exchange Server, but they still have Exchange servers hanging around for a number of reasons. So this will disrupt mail if you don't deal with it quickly. And hybrid customers will feel the pain first if Microsoft follows its past practice, because when it introduced this mechanism in 2023, it targeted customers who had hybrid servers that were exchanging mail with Exchange Online. So keep in mind that Microsoft is trying to get you to migrate to Exchange Online. Microsoft's entire business model is to get everybody on subscriptions. But you can get cut off, even if you're not on Exchange Online, if you're on an unsupported version of Exchange Server. So if sending mail to anybody in Exchange Online is important to you, you need to be monitoring the situation and make sure you can tell the difference between being blocked for being persistently vulnerable versus garden variety network failures. And then on the Outlook side, Outlook is undergoing a massive redesign that's basically putting it in the hands of Exchange Online. Essentially, Microsoft is rolling out a service that really is Outlook on the web, so the web interface to Exchange Online. And then it's rolling out what it calls the new Outlook, which is a client app. It runs on a platform based on Edge through this library, WebView 2. And it runs, on top of that, the new species of Outlook add-ins, the JavaScript add-ins. So what you end up with is a local version of Outlook on the web that has some additional capabilities. For example, it can do a few things with PST files, which is not something that you would normally expect Outlook on the web to deal with. So this is undergoing a very gradual transition, and we know that people are very worked up about it, frankly. So it's where we are today. So as you see, we're here in the first quarter of 2025. Microsoft has announced that it will start an opt-out process for Outlook on Windows in Microsoft 365. And what this means is up to now, if you have Microsoft 365 licenses for Office for your clients, those clients will start getting the new Outlook, this Outlook on the web thingy, sometime in April, unless they opt out or you opt out on their behalf. But then sometime later, we don't know how long, this is just one scenario out here. Sometime later, Microsoft will do an actual cutover where classic Outlook, the Outlook most of you are familiar with and almost certainly are running in your data centers right now, is going to be retired first from Microsoft 365, and then I would anticipate but can't prove yet from Office in 2029. Now, what does this have to do with you? Well, classic Outlook is probably what you're using, but some people license for Microsoft 365 apps for enterprise, the Microsoft 365 Office, because they want the functionality of that. You won't be getting that after classic Outlook is retired from Microsoft 365. If you want sort of a preview of what the impact is on end users and on your systems, the Mac people are going through this right now. Legacy Outlook will be out of Microsoft 365 apps, and it will also be cut off from eventually from Exchange Online using that same mechanism that I talked about earlier, the persistently vulnerable server mechanism. So bottom line, you're going to be able to keep your current, if you're an American, you remember the words, if you like your Outlook, you can keep it, and you will be able to keep older classic Outlook until 2029. But if you're on Microsoft 365 licensing for the client, you will have to start thinking about new Outlook. Okay, so that pretty much wraps up what I have to say about Exchange. I would recommend starting on migrations as soon to 2019 as soon as possible if you're going to do the double hop. And this is a place where, amazingly enough, we agree with Microsoft. It seems like the safest course. I personally am a little worried that the upgrade in place, it's new-ish, and I'm not sure I want to be the first one to test it, but you have an opportunity now with CU15. And then for Exchange Server 2019, the main thing is get CU15 tested and out the door as soon as possible, because that's your model of Exchange Server SE, and that'll be the best thing if you're not in a technology adoption program to find out what it's really going to do. If you're hybrid with Exchange Online, you've got some services in Exchange Online, some mailboxes in Exchange Online, others in Exchange Server. Make sure that the server's facing out your edge or your front door servers, not your CAS, your client access servers, but the ones that exchange mail with Exchange Online or route to Exchange Online. Get those to Exchange Server SE as soon as possible. The ones that are further back in your organization, mailbox service and so on, you could probably discreetly stay on an older version for some time. And the product does allow a certain amount of coexistence among versions. There's no other way big installations could get migrated. But also make sure that you can tell the difference between a failure and Exchange Online booting you. It will return distinctive errors if you get marked persistently vulnerable. You will just have to know how to check for those errors. So you may have to, your operations team may have to fool what they're monitoring to some extent. Long term, we always ask the question, do you really need email on premises? It's not usually something that gives companies a competitive advantage. If you're under thousands of feet of concrete in a missile silo, yeah, maybe you do need on-premises mail for internal communications. But everybody else, all I can say is there are legitimate reasons to keep email on premises. We have a report about that by Andy Snodgrass that I referred to a little further on. But you have to continually recheck, are those still valid for our company as we have evolved? Because the price is going to go up. Now that you're on subscription licensing, you can't park. You have to keep paying no matter how high the prices go up. And Microsoft has a built-in incentive to raise the prices on Exchange Server in particular, because it'll push people to Exchange Online.
There we are. Okay, it's me. So hello, folks. I'm going to talk to you about Skype for Business Server, and you're going to recognize a lot of the themes here from what Rob Helm just talked about. I'd like to say it's the same song in a different key, and we've changed a little bit of the wording around, but a lot of it's the same. Again, you've got this Meteor that we like to talk about, and for us, Meteor is just shorthand for several different things going out of support at once. It just seems to be this habit that Microsoft tends to like to line things up, and we've got this big one coming in October. But I do want to talk a little bit about kind of how we got here in the first place. Microsoft kind of put you in not the best situation, and then some ways you can get out of it, and then some recommendations, just as we talked about with Exchange. So for Skype for Business Server, the last version of Skype for Business Server that we saw was the wonderful Skype for Business Server 2019, released in late 2018. And that was, that's 2018. That was a different world for all of us. But even then, it was pretty apparent that Microsoft was dialing it in and really wanted customers on Teams. Skype for Business Server 2019 had a shorter support window. It only had 7 years of support, but it gave you 5 years of mainstream support and only 2 years of extended support, which made it coterminous with Skype for Business Server 2015. You didn't have in-place upgrades because Skype for Business Server 2019 was, according to Microsoft, built on the same code base as Skype for Business Server Online. You couldn't do an in-place upgrade from Skype for Business Server 2015 to Skype for Business Server 2019. So what did you really get out of this? You got easier migration to Teams because they wanted you to go there, and you got more mainstream support and very little else. You lost your in-place upgrades. They removed persistent chat server, but put it back later, and a bunch of monitoring and planning tools that were with Skype for Business Server 2015 weren't supported in 2019. Now, the cumulative updates, which we're currently on CU8, we'll talk about that in a minute, did bring some eventual things. They finally killed the ancient Silverlight control panel. We all remember when they were taking on Adobe Flash. Emergency mitigation service was added in cumulative update 7, which basically added the ability to close off access to certain things in case there was a security vulnerability, although it doesn't cut you off in the same way that the Exchange updates. And it did eventually bring compatibility with Windows Server 2022 and SQL Server 2022. But what else? What else has happened in the last 7 years? Well, it kind of looks a little bit like this. I love those moments, like to wave at them as they pass by. And that's really a lot of what seemed to happen with Skype for Business Server. Microsoft focused heavily on Teams. It's just like that home project you keep saying you're going to work on, and suddenly 7 years have gone by and it's still sitting there and it's just gathered a whole lot of dust. Microsoft said in early 2021 that there would be a Skype for Business update released in late 2021 with a subscription pricing model, but that was never materialized. And later on, Microsoft even tried, when we pressed them on it, they're like, oh, we never said that. I actually had to point our reps like, here's the blog where you said it. I screen capped it before you went back and changed it. So they did say they were going to do something. Meanwhile, Skype for Business Server slowly ended losing connectivity options to the cloud and other services. Skype for Business Online was retired entirely in July 2021 in favor of Teams, and Hybrid Voice and Skype for Business Server Cloud Connector Edition, which allowed it to connect to Skype for Business Online, were also retired, which that meant if you wanted to integrate your on-premises Skype for Business Server deployment, you had to use direct routing, which means you have to have a compatible session border controller, connect that to Teams, have all of that stuff involved to do that. It's basically meant you had to change how you were connecting to things. And Teams Rooms support for Skype for Business Server, the ability of your Teams Rooms installations to talk to Skype for Business Server, was retired in October 2023. So slowly its connectivity options were being cut off. Meanwhile, just like that home project that keeps getting worse, the support clock was still ticking. Skype for Business Server 2015, it went into extended support on October of 2020. Skype for Business 2019 went into extended support in January of last year. 2013, Link Server 2013, remember Link? That went out of support quite a while ago. And end of service for both was October 14, that wonderful Meteor that we're talking about. And we got nothing, no news, nothing. We asked Microsoft repeatedly. And then finally, middle of last year, they announced Skype for Business Server SE subscription edition, which was basically what they said they were going to do back in 2021, but delayed it a while. And we all know why. I mean, they were focusing on Teams during the early parts of the pandemic, and Microsoft's been pretty much blinded when it comes to anything that isn't AI recently. So they did announce this. It's announced for release early in Q3 2025, following cumulative update 8, which came out in December. And that puts us right in this fun spot, and we'll talk about this in a little bit. We'll zoom in on that. But like the Ghost version from before, this is a subscription edition, and subscription does mean pay as you go. It doesn't mean I can pay for it monthly, but what it means is that you have to keep software assurance on your licenses to be supported and receive updates. Now, there's some other ways around that, and we'll talk about that since Rob Helm told you that I would talk about licensing in a little bit. But other than ongoing support, There's no new features that have been mentioned. So we won't even have support for Windows Server 2025. They've said, well, maybe we'll add it in a later cumulative update. It will be code equivalent to Skype for Business Server 2019. So at least this time you'll get an in-place upgrade, unlike with 2015. But the big thing is you're just going to get support. There's no other features that have been announced. And this is kind of important here too. It goes from a traditional support model, what we've got here in red, the mainstream and extended support model that you all know and love. It lets you have a clear window, a clear vision of how long this is going to be supported. With modern support, hey, it's ongoing. You can just keep using the same version and they release cumulative updates, and isn't life wonderful? But modern support from Microsoft means that they can kill it with a year's notice. So think about that for a second. And this applies to Exchange Server too. When you put something in, when something is on their modern support model, that means that, oh, well, we can give you as little as 12 months notice to say, we're ending support for this product. So that's an important thing to consider as you debate whether or not you want to keep these products on premises, because the support that Microsoft's giving you is not as reliable. It's not as, I know it's going to be there 3 years from now. The message really here is that Microsoft has heard your customers that still need Skype for Business Server and Exchange Server on premises, whether it's compliance, data sovereignty purposes, in-house security, or maybe you've got some legacy integration that's core to your business that you just can't retire yet. But it's going to come at a cost. The cost is going to be ongoing, and it's not going to be as long-term reliable as you were used to with the old traditional support model. So that's kind of how we got here. Now, how are we going to move forward? So this is why I promised we'd zoom in. These are Microsoft made the delay. You're the one who's suffering the urgency now. They waited a long time for these SE versions, but they put it on you. So you're here right now. You're here. There's just 7 months now between now and the end of support for 2015 and 2019. That's all currently available versions of Skype for Business Server. And SE isn't expected until early Q3, which means July at the very earliest. That means only 3 months to move to SE before the other versions go out of support. If staying in support, it stays a priority for you. And it should be. You know, if some big security issue comes out and you're not supported, then that's not so great. Now, this isn't so bad if you're already on Skype for Business Server 2019, because same with the Exchange Server situation, Microsoft claims the upgrade to Subscription Edition from 2019 is a little bit more than a cumulative update. You can call this one Cumulative Update 9. It'll wrap up any updates since Cumulative Update 8, which came out in December, and it'll bring the new SE branding and the licensing requirements that you have to have SA to get, support and to get your updates. But if you're on 2015, then you've got more of a task, or if you're even way back on 2013, because there's still no in-place upgrade. Microsoft is recommending right now is kind of the same thing that we talked about with Exchange Server. You should get to 2019, because that's a side-by-side upgrade, and then you should do an in-place upgrade to SE when it comes out. But overall, there's still not a lot of time for that. And not to mention, did you manage to get new servers in your budget for this year? Not to mention the OpEx of actually doing it, the time for the project planning and everything else. And again, I just want to reemphasize the question that we keep getting asked. Microsoft's given no indication that there's going to be ESUs or any other extension of support for 2015 or 2019. I think people got a little bit spoiled when Microsoft did all those extensions for Windows 7, and they keep hoping that they're just going to push that out, and Microsoft really doesn't seem to be interested in it. I mean, if they're really late in delivering SC, that may change. You know, I'm not going to say it's not going to happen, but there's no rumor of it other than wishful thinking right now. So let's talk about getting there. I'll give you a different diagram than Rob did. And, you know, again, these similarly apply to Exchange, so it's a different way of looking at it. In this case, 2019 is built on the Skype for Business Online. Skype for Business Server Online code base. So you don't have a direct path. You have to do a side-by-side migration if you're on Link Server 2013 or Skype for Business Server 2015. So that means, again, you get 2 sets of servers, 2 separate environments. you set up the new environment entirely, and then you migrate your users and your configuration and everything else over. Then, once you've done that, you keep your environment current. You apply CU8, which came out in December. You apply any subsequent hot fixes or security updates that come out. There was actually just a hot fix that came out for CU8 recently. You get all those done, and then you'll be able to upgrade in place to Skype for Business Server SE, which same thing here. Microsoft has said that SE will be code equivalent to 2019, same functionality. It's just going to be the branding and the new licensing things. That should minimize the risk of any issues during the upgrade. But like any upgrade, you still want to have rollback plans. You still want to have contingency plans. And lastly, I just want to mention, if you are on one of the older versions, if you are on these, yes, there is potentially the option of instead of going down here, that you just go all the way over and come down here instead. You come down and do a direct side grade to SE. You can do that. Microsoft has said that's an option, but that means it's challenging to remain in continuous support. A side-by-side upgrade is obviously more time intensive, takes more planning to do, and it's better to do that now, here, when you can do it to 2019, than to wait to SE if staying in continuous support is a priority for you. And again, in today's security environment, you don't necessarily want to be outside of support. Let's talk a bit about what's underneath. Again, a slightly different approach than Rob took, but the same thing. What this is about, these are the versions of Windows Server and SQL Server supported by Skype for Business Server 2015 and 2019. I'm really including 2015 for reference here, since you're going to have to do that side-by-side migration to get to 2019 or SE. On this side here are the end of support dates for the appropriate version of SQL Server or Windows Server. So with SE having the same hardware and software requirements as 2019, that means it supports, all the way back to this combination here. You look at that. That should have been a brighter one, but that gives you the combination of, you can go all the way back to Windows Server 2016 and SQL Server 2017. Hey, that's nice. I get to put this on my really old hardware, but those both are going to leave support in 2017, and you probably don't want that. In 2027. Really, this chart is for orgs that have 2019. This is where you can see where you are now. If you've got 2019 already set up, maybe you upgraded to it a year or two ago, you can look at what your underlying OS and database is, determine how long those are going to be supported, match that against your anticipated need for Skype for Business Server, because really, you should be planning to get off of it. SE is not going to be kept forever. We've told you that it's kind of tenuous how long it'll be supported. Microsoft's not going to give you years of notice. So you should be making the plan already to get off of it. How long is that going to take? Well, that determines whether or not you will need to move off of what you already have for Skype for Business Server 2019, or if you need to do new hardware with a new underlying operating system and database. So let's go into the gnarly part and talk about licensing. So what this really means is that you might be covered. You might already be a winner. Skype for Business user CALs are included in Office 365 and Microsoft 365 suites. You're looking at this highlighted area, this area that I highlighted here, is specifically what we're looking at. And you'll see that Skype for Business CALs, the user CALs, are included here. Most of what you need is an E1 and E3 right here, but you need the plus cal all the way up here in E5 if you're doing enterprise voice capabilities. That is, you're connecting your Skype for Business Server deployment to your phone system. So if you have those, then for those users that have those, you don't need to buy separate Skype for Business user CALs with software assurance. You're already paying for them. Now, under some circumstances, the Skype for Business server CALs, the server licenses, can also be included, waived really, but only under certain circumstances. First, all of your users, every single one on your Skype for Business server deployment, need to be licensed for Microsoft 365, E3 or E5, every single one. Okay, if they're all licensed, then hey, you're good. But there's another condition, which is going to impact a fair number of you. You need to be a volume licensing customer on a program that provides that waiver. And that includes enterprise agreements and the MPSA, Microsoft Products and Services Agreement, but it doesn't apply to the MCA, the Microsoft Customer Agreement. And Microsoft's been pushing a lot of customers to the MCA. So if you're in an EA or an MSPA, and again, all of your users are licensed for Microsoft 365, E3, and E5, then you've got the user CALs, you've got the server CALs, so you don't have to go off and buy new licenses with SA, but you've got to be on one of these volume licensing programs. So let's wrap this up here with some questions you should be asking yourself and our recommendations. And again, this is going to be the same song, different words for what you saw for Exchange Server. First off, can you just dodge it entirely? Just evaluate if you still need Skype for Business Server on premises or if you can adopt Teams. I mean, let's be honest, we all kind of like to hug our servers. We like to know they're local and under our control, but sometimes you need to let them go to the cloud. And if you do need it, but only short term until you complete a migration, then what's your acceptable risk versus cost? I mean, the risk, of course, is being in an unsupported environment that's not receiving bug fixes or security updates. But the cost is the upgrade effort, including the operational expenses of effort and licenses and the capital expenses of new hardware if you're on 2015 or earlier. And I'm not going to say that you should operate in an unsupported state. I do not recommend that at all. But that is, risk is risk. And risk versus cost is a decision, it's an evaluation that every organization needs to make. And so if it's only going to be short term, if that risk is acceptable versus the cost, that might be a decision you want to make. But if you do it, I strongly recommend, if you're talking to business leaders above you, make sure the business leaders above you know and accept the risk in case the worst does happen. Because if the worst happens, they're going to be looking for someone's throat to choke. So you make sure it's not yours. Just be very clear-eyed about that risk. But if you're definitely deploying Skype for Business Server SE, then you should get started now to be ready. Just like we said before, begin moving to Skype for Business Server 2019 with the latest cumulative update, any released hot fixes, and you can evaluate your underlying infrastructure per that chart 2 slides back and match your environment to how long you anticipate needing to maintain Skype for Business Server SE. And again, the reason we recommend starting now to do the 2-step, get to updated 2019, and then go to SE, is that gives you basically more time. If you kick the can down the road and you wait to do all of your updates until Skype for Business Server SE is already released, that's only 3 months. That's really, really short in enterprise project planning. Better to start now if you can and do that. Get a start on it. And again, evaluate your underlying infrastructure and consider your license estate. Like I talked about there, if you've already been making plans to move to Microsoft 365, move to the cloud, then you've probably got a lot of those licenses already. Check what you've got. Don't buy more than you need. And I'll go ahead and give the promotion. We've got excellent advisory services for helping you do that, and it really does help if you're coming up on an EA. You can there's always what's explicitly in the product terms, and then there's what you can negotiate if you happen to be at the point of negotiating a renewal. You can say, hey, this is important to us. Give us a little wiggle room on this, and they might give. And we've got some people that can help you do some of that. Now we've got these resources. These are all up on our site. These are all reports that we've done. We've got the executive focus on risks mounting for on-premises software that Rob Helm mentioned. We've got licensing reference set entries for all of these: Exchange Server, Skype for Business Server, full-on Microsoft 365 Enterprise, to get even larger and more detailed versions of that licensing information I gave you. And of course, reports on both of the new editions of Skype for Business Server and Exchange Server. So we've covered all the main things we want to actually tell you, and now it's time for a bit of a wrap up, and then we can take your questions.
Great, thanks, Jim. As we wait for questions to come in, let's quickly cover some additional resources. One of the advantages of a Directions on Microsoft membership is access to our member portal, where we have detailed licensing guides, product roadmaps, recordings of previous webinars like today, and a ton of other resources to help you stay up to date and in the know. If you're a member and you need help accessing the portal, you can email us at service@directionsonmicrosoft.com. And if you're not a member and you'd like to learn more, please email us at sales@directionsonmicrosoft.com. And our next webinar is Thursday, April 17th at 10 a.m. Pacific. The topic will be Power Platform Overview, and it will be presented by Directions Analyst Rob Sanfilippo. To learn more about our webinars, visit the member portal, or you can email us at sales@directionsonmicrosoft.com. Licensing training. If understanding the complex landscape of Microsoft licensing is crucial to your role, we offer Microsoft licensing boot camps and EA negotiation workshops that are considered to be industry-leading trainings in this space. We offer them both online and in person. Our next offering is in Atlanta, Georgia, April 22nd through 24th. But if a virtual format works better for you, our next offering is July 14th through the 18th. To register or learn more, visit our website or email us at sales@directionsonmicrosoft.com. And as Jim mentioned, we have some fantastic industry veterans that can offer advisory and consulting services. Will help you level the playing field with Microsoft with our behind-the-scenes EA negotiation support, or verify your licensing position with accuracy with our audit defense service. Everything from strategy assessments to ongoing expert desk support, our industry veterans are here to help. If you'd like to learn more about our advisory services and how they can benefit your organization, please email us at sales@directionsonmicrosoft.com. And I blasted through that because I wanted to get to the questions. We have some great ones coming in. So gentlemen, if you're ready, yes. Are you
Fire
ready?
when ready, Risley.
Okay. All right. If we are running an Exchange 2019 hybrid solution to manage mailboxes, and we're also hybrid from an identity standpoint as we sync from on-prem AD to separate ADs on our Office 365 and Entra tenant, both ADs using the same email domain, will SE be a solution for us?
Oh boy.
Yes, I told you.
It's an absolutely legitimate question. I know there's other customers who are in a similar situation, including some in the queue for this talk. I can't really get out and at that discuss the architecture at that level right now. But something like I'd love to talk to you more about it and see what we could deliver that would help you handle that kind of scenario. But yeah, we can't analyze somebody's specific scenario at that kind of detail in a 10-minute talk, 10 minutes left to us. But people have been asking, especially if they're in a situation similar to yours where they're synchronizing AD, how do we get off Exchange Server on premises? We'd really like to go full cloud, but how can we get rid of all those Exchange servers on premises? And in some scenarios, you can move the directory management tools to clients and shut down a couple of those last Exchange servers. But if you're synchronized to Office 365 and Microsoft 365 services and Entra, it's going to be a problem right now. But I'm hoping that we'll learn more about it and be able to tell you about a solution in our regular reports.
Great.
That also, there was a similar question. Let's see, I'm trying to find it. Oh, maybe when it comes up, I'll point it out. There are quite a few, not questions, but comments from a very reliable source who appears frequently on the Exchange team blog that he said might be worth mentioning this or that, but I think they're all worth mentioning, so I'll bring some up. One is that there was a prior CU 14 for Windows Server or Exchange Server 2019, and that actually is going to be supported with Windows Server 2025. I don't know how long, and that might be worth asking on the blog. By the way, the Exchange team in general, they have one of the most interesting blogs of the product group blogs at Microsoft, and they answer questions, they take feedback, some of which probably hurts. And in general, I admire their transparency. However you feel about the product, however you feel about the licensing, the blog is worth a look.
I'll mention that he said that not in the middle of webinars with Exchange bloggers here too. So
yes, absolutely true. So another thing that might be worth mentioning, throttling and blocking provides 30 days of reporting only, yes. And it only looks at connecting servers, yeah. So again, if it's a server kind of back away from the internet and that Microsoft wouldn't be doing regular business with, it's not going to get throttled or blocked the same way as, say, the front ends that route inbound mail between your organization and Exchange Online. Exchange Server SE won't support the new Outlook until at least early 2026. I'd heard that. I had not heard that. That's very interesting. It'll be when CU1 is coming out, apparently about that time. So I had also had Exchange Server 2019 or Exchange Server SE CU1 for end of this year. So it sounds like it's going to be the first half cumulative update rather than the second half of 2025. So both useful pieces of information. But it's also the first time I've heard definitively that new Outlook would be supported with Exchange Server SE. So Mary Jill Foley, whom many of you have heard of, maintains on our blog a series of articles about moving to the new Outlook or not. And we'll update those as we do regularly with this information.
Thanks a lot, Scott.
Yeah, do you want a chance to read some more questions? Scott's got some more, but maybe we should give somebody else a turn.
Yeah, I'd like to chime in here. That would be great. Let's see. Do you happen to know what version of SQL Server Express is built into Skype for Business Server SE Standard Edition?
No, I do not. I'm sorry, I don't have that answer for you.
No problem. And has Microsoft outlined a plan to migrate from hybrid Exchange to full cloud with a synchronized directory?
That's the question we keep getting from customers.
Oh, yes,
I
you're right.
don't have a good answer, but yeah, that's absolutely the right question and something I'd like to learn more about and share with we've learned in our publications.
Okay, thank you. We have Exchange 2019 on-prem servers acting as mail relay to support legacy applications. All of our users are in Office 365. Can we migrate to SE without paying an additional license?
Okay, so let me think about this. Do you already have enough? Okay, well, first of all, let me just establish some ground facts about licensing. So Exchange Server is licensed on a client server model. Every server requires a server license normally, and every employee, client, device, or user requires a client access license or CAL normally. You can cover the CAL requirements by buying Exchange Server CALs, and Exchange Server SE will have subscription CALs for that purpose, as far as I know. But you can also satisfy that requirement by buying a Microsoft 365 or Office 365 plan that includes rights to Exchange Online. And as you probably know, there's two levels of Exchange Server CAL. So there's some, it's a little tricky to pick the right Microsoft 365 license. But okay, so that out of the way, if you have covered your entire organization with Office 365 or Microsoft 365 CALs entitled to the level of Exchange functionality, standard or enterprise client that you are using, then in principle, Exchange Server SE should not have additional cost impact on the client. Maybe we should let this person add any qualifiers he or she needs to, in case I haven't answered the question.
And if I can pop in real
Jim,
quick
go ahead,
too,
jump in.
and I'm waiting to see if the user jumps in there. If the user says they're using it as a relay, do you just mean like a plain out just a straight up SMTP relay, or because if you're just using it as a plain relay and there's no actual user mailboxes on the server, then that might obviate the need for user
I
license.
see. The client requirements might not be. Yes, that's true. I guess I'm trying to think if there's any situation because Microsoft 365 user licenses, like almost all
Okay, yeah,
Microsoft
okay. Hey,
user licenses.
Promoth, I see it. Yes, just an SMTP relay.
Okay, good. That's helpful. Yeah, then that you may be good. The reason I hesitate is Microsoft has some rules regarding indirect access to products, but even then, I don't think that would apply here. But even if it did, if all your users
Yeah.
are covered by CALs, you're okay. The one issue is the server license. If you have committed enterprise-wide to buying a Microsoft 365 license at an appropriate level, for example, through an enterprise agreement, then in many cases, your server licenses are free. So you may want to look at and make sure you're taking advantage of if you're worried about the cost of server licenses.
I just saw here again another nice little pop on. Yeah, so you need So here we are. So from Scott, you need licenses for any users or devices accessing the server.
Right.
So yeah, so in a relay scenario, you need the server license, and according to Scott here, and a license for each user or device that sends
Right.
mail through the server. So
And
there
in
is
a
that.
lot of our material online that members have, we talk about multiplexing, and that's the scenario we're talking about. If you indirectly access Microsoft software, generally you need
Yep.
some kind of client license or other coverage.
Yeah.
Thank
And
you.
also, I'll pop out one more thing from Scott there. He says the Exchange Server team is working on a long-term permanent solution for the last Exchange Server issue. No ETA, but they're working on it. So
Yeah, and they have
again.
been for a very long time. It's a hard and they keep knocking off pieces of it. So
Yeah.
eventually it'll be all pieces and no problem.
Yeah.
Thank you. That was really helpful.
Yeah,
Any,
thanks.
any changes to public folders with Exchange SE?
Well, I don't think there's changes as such, but the clients, on the other hand, are stiffing them. A key problem that's going on with the public folders is there's one protocol left as far other than the normal Outlook protocol that allows you to access them, and that's Exchange Web Services. And that protocol is going to be retired because of security issues, at least from Exchange Online. So, and it's not entirely clear to me what will happen when there are no Exchange Web Services clients on the planet. Legacy Outlook on the Mac, for example, is gone. So I would say that the public folders might well be there on the server, but no one's there to talk to them because the clients are gradually killing the support for that protocol. If they're the only way you can get at them, yeah. So I would again, Microsoft has been telling you for years, but this is an even bigger reason to start getting things out of those Exchange public folders and into, if you're on Office 365 groups or some other collaboration framework altogether, to like Teams or Slack.
And one thing that I'll add in here is that the thing that we've been hearing from Microsoft repeatedly when they're talking about both Skype for Business Server SE and Exchange Server SE is that it's going to be, for all intents and purposes, feature and code equivalent to the 2019 version. They're not changing features. They're not, all they're mostly doing at this point is changing the branding and updating the support requirements. There may be changes in future cumulative updates, but you should pretty much expect, based on all the information we've been given, that if it's working on 2019 for you, it'll be working on SE.
Thank you. I think that is all the time we have for questions.
Oh, there was a softball. Can someone provide a link to the Exchange blog referenced? And there was a similar question about whether this is being recorded or not.
Yes, I've gotten answers to those.
Okay, great.
Yes,
Thanks.
I have follow-ups. Yes, thank you so much. Is there anything you wanted to say before I close this out?
I'm good. Jim?
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks, everybody.
Great.
I'm gonna do the call out. Thanks, Scott, for your input. That was really
Yeah,
appreciated.
absolutely.
nice to have a member here. We aren't paying him; he's not paying us, but it was great to have that input. It really appreciate
Yeah, it really
that.
was. Thank you.
Really
Thanks,
great.
everybody. Have a great weekend. Talk to you later.
Thank you. Talk to you
Thank you,
later. Bye-bye.
everyone.